Hello, welcome back to Math Time with Professor Prime, and I'm your host as always, Professor Prime. And before we begin, something is different. It's a bit off. And if you've seen the title, you could probably guess where I am right now. It's a place all too familiar, yet a bit strange. With that being said, today we're going to talk about math and Stranger Things. And I look forward to this. It is a show it is pretty awesome, right? You have sci-fi, you have good music, you have D&D, you have adventure, you have just so much awesomeness, and of course, the 80s, which, I dig. And I'm not just saying that because I'm from that time. Okay, that being said, here's how this video is going to go. I am going to talk about Stranger Things. I'm going to talk about how there's math in universe and math in the meta sense, and I'm going to be talking about my feelings towards the series as a whole, as well as what I thought about like the story and characters and all that good stuff. With that in mind, there will be spoilers ahead. Okay, just assume all the spoilers for everything Stranger Things. With that in mind, we are going to go forward. We are going to rock. Just saying. But yeah, one more time, spoilers ahead. Okay, so with Stranger Things, right? It is a juggernaut. It is 5 seasons, 42 episodes, a story that has, taken place in real time these last 9 years. Within universe, it takes place over the course of 60 years, unless you count the background stuff. But the stuff that we're following is a 6 year period, right? Like 1983 to ultimately 1989. If you're up to date with everything, and again, I said there was spoilers ahead, so we're gonna get into some things, but we're gonna start talking about just the math of it all first, and just like go from there, because Stranger Things is something that does not hide the math, right? We see it used in multiple ways, but it's also like mentioned directly several times, right? Like we see this a lot of the times through our characters and their plans, their crawls, and we see the math show up in their navigation. We see it as they're plotting things out. We see it through their communication, right? We see how they are, splitting up into teams in various scenarios, mapping out environments, and dealing with things like ammo, or dealing with like setting this thing off at this time, or keeping in communication to put all that together. And I like that. And there's math that's a reference as they are in school, because right, like math is such a big part of academia. Though I do think we fumble the ball a bit on that. And I say that as someone who likes it and enjoyed math in school. We get right up to the point and then like we miss it. Math is something that is everywhere and in everything, and it is everything. And so when we get it in school, that should reflect that, but it doesn't always. At any rate, that being said, because of its importance in school and its importance being due to the, you know, reality of it all, we often see math talked about in media, right? And Stranger Things is no exception. And I just like that, whether it be a math class directly or a science class, there's something that the students learn, or like their teachers will help out, specifically the one teacher like Mr. Clark, um, will see something that will like help out later on, right? And I dig that. So there's math in the planning, in the plotting, in the crawls, the navigation, the communication, and executing said plan. But that's not all, right? Like we said, there's math in the class, and there's math in that meta sense, but we'll get to it. Yeah, so I just like that they're not afraid to say that, hey, we use math to, figure out this plan, right? I dig that. And then there's this idea that everything that we're seeing over the course of these like 5 seasons, over the course of these 9 years. It's math in motion. So I wanted to talk about math in a meta sense, because like that's always key, right? Like you have these episodes which have range in terms of how long they are, right? Because you have episodes as short as 42 minutes or as long as an hour. Oh, sorry, as long as 142 minutes, right? Like so over 2 hours, almost 2 hours and a half at that point, and that's crazy, right? There's only one that got that long, although the finale gets pretty close to that. Um, but yeah, so there's a wide range of episodes, like told over these like, oh sorry, like I'm sorry it's late, and I finished watching the finale, not long before this. At any rate, so you have these episodes that vary in length and that have been telling this tale for over 9 years. And for the record, I like the setup of the episodes, right? Because like if you're looking at the episode counts, they vary season to season. All of the odd seasons have 8 episodes, and the even ones have 9. I mean, I don't know if that was like intentional to have that pattern like 8, 9, 8, 9, 8, but I think it's cool. That being said, right, like there's math in mapping out how long a series is going to last and how many minutes an episode is going to be. And the way it typically works is, right, you're going to have a lot of footage that you're going to condense into that time frame, right? Like, so a lot of editing. And, excuse me, there's math across the board with all of it, right? There's math in the writing. There's math in the actors and what they're doing, and their breathing, their talking, their actual lines and the words that they're saying. Like, how many lines they have, how many words are in those lines, and how they're spacing everything out. But there's also math in their movement, right? And math and them judging where each other is in any given scene. There's math in the scene itself, math in the sets, the lighting, the music, the fashion. And, since we're dealing with the 80s, I feel like there was so much like care that was actually placed on, getting the feel of that decade. And that's cool. And there's just like math across the board at every conceivable level. If you didn't think it was math the whole time. Math has been the like uh, extra character that we may not have realized was a character throughout Stranger Things, and I dig that. And also with the editing, I like the scene transitions, right? Because they're so intentional, so deliberate, and I think throughout that entire show, a lot of the transitions had this way of creating a sense of symmetry through reflection in a dynamic fashion that worked. Now, there was a short that I made a while back where I talked about 2 cases of that, and I want to reiterate that here because, like, one case is something that they do more than once, and one was just something that I really liked. Okay, so one transition they had like in the middle, sorry, at the beginning of like season 5 was like the characters talking about a crawl and talking about mapping that out and what they're going to do, and it's already like mathematical in nature, but you had this idea that you had like 2 groups. You had the older kids and the younger kids, and by that I mean like you had the party and like the older characters associated with them, right? And so they're all having the conversations and they're bouncing back and forth, and each member of each group, there was a corresponding member in the other group making the same points that they were making. So you had this conversation that's playing out between the two and bouncing back and forth, and I like how that flowed and the dynamic that created. That was cool, right? That was a slick transition. And another big one I liked is there was an episode in season 4 where you had the party traveling to a location, and the older kids were also traveling to that location in the upside down. And they're riding on their bicycles in both cases. And so in the regular world, they're riding off into the distance, and as they're doing that, the screen begins to rotate, and then it rotates into the upside down where you have the older kids going, and at this point, the camera's going with it, and so it's right side up and the upside down, if that makes sense. And I like that because there's math and all that, and that rotating and that imagery and that sense of symmetry that it creates, and I dig it. I dig it hard. And honestly, there's so much more that you can say though about Stranger Things. I just wanted to talk about it for a bit because it is a juggernaut of a show. It just finished up, and like it's a wild thing because it is a franchise at this point. I guess it's been a franchise because you have the main show, right? But you have a stage play. You have an upcoming show after this show. There have been video games, there have been comics, and there have been books. There's been countless merchandise, and you know there's different advertisements that you'll see featuring like Stranger Things, and there's just money and how all that works, how that functions and flows, and there's math in that money, and it's just like wild to think about how big it is, and it's not quite done because again they have an upcoming show, but it's just like it's wild to think about it. I was absolutely late to the party on it, sort of, because like I had seen a little bit of Stranger Things like way back in the day, when I was like visiting my parents and my mom was like watching it, and so I meant to like watch that on my own accord, but that didn't happen because life, and then it just kept on building up. I'm like, oh, wait till it's finished, and then it just kept on going, and there were some gaps between like the years is that going on because it's like that first season is like 2016, and then the second season came out in 2017, and that's typical. But then third season came out in 2019, and then so there was already a little bit of a gap because like 2 years, right? But then season four came out in 2022, so that's 3 year gap, and then another 3 year gap until we get to season five, which is just finished up because we're now in 2026 at the time of recording. But it just finished up, and so it's just like it's wild to think about. But like yeah, so it took me a while to like get to it, but between talking to so many people that kept on saying that, hey man, I know you're gonna like this, like I know, I gotta get to it. But I'm not mad about when I started because my journey with it was when I'm sorry, again, it's late. My journey with Stranger Things is my journey with Stranger Things. I started when I started, and I don't regret that because it's like I am who I am when I started it, and enjoying that as it has been, right? And getting to like watch it like progress. That's been cool, and just like see it wrap up. And with that being said, before I do close it out, I do want to like talk about my feelings towards it. And again, like I said, spoilers in the beginning, so I don't feel too bad about this. But I just wanted to give a reminder. Okay, so I'll talk about how I feel about each season first, and then just talk about like the story overall and like how I feel about the characters. Okay, so for season one, that was pretty much pitch perfect. They did a very good job. You get a solid introduction to everyone. You get a mystery going. You get Elle with her superpowers, her psychic powers, whatever you want to call them. They're both. But anyway, you get that, and when it ends, just pretty solid, right? And if you didn't pick it up again, it's like you'd be missing out on a lot. But it's like it's a solid story through and through. Then season two comes, and it amps everything up, right? Because our character's back. You have more going on. Elle gets to demonstrate more of her powers, and I like that because like in the first one, like the Demigorgons, like when we saw them back then, they were a big deal, right? It took a lot to take them out, and Elle takes one out, right? By the end of that, so that was cool. And then in season two, he closes the whole gate, and that's a bonkers, right? And so I think so. You had these two seasons back to back. I really enjoyed the first one, and the second one I very much enjoyed as well. And it was really solid because they upped the stakes, and it was huge, right? And so then, season three, it's a good season overall, but it is a slow burn. Like because at the beginning, it was like the characters they have to do their like drama segments of it, and there's a lot of setup to the big bad, which in that particular season we're dealing with the mind flayer, and there's more on that later, but so we're dealing with all the stuff going on there, but the ultimate big bad was the mind slayer, and so it's like you had all the setup, but then once things like kicked into gear, they really kicked into gear, and the action was sick. And so by the end of that season, it's like, yeah, I'm feeling this. And like the battle of the mind flayer was insane, right? So season four is like I feel like in that season, there was like real world events were absolutely impacting how that got mapped out because you had characters like very far away, and you didn't get a lot of characters interacting in ways that they interacted before. And but that's not to say that I feel like that hurt the show. It's just like it was different, right? But I think like one thing I do like about season four is they didn't waste much time. There's a lot of story in that, and I think it's mostly good. You had retcons galore, but I don't think they were bad. It was interesting to see more about Elle's story, and see more about like who Vecna is. Although I do think because of how certain things are phrased and certain things you come across later, it's like, well, who's in control? Is it Vecna or the Mind Slayer? Or sorry, Mind Flayer? And we get our answer in season five. It's like both, but you can make arguments about that still. That it's more the Mind Flayer than Vecna, aka Henry, aka One. But anyway, season four, I don't think that they wasted time. I think they made a lot count. The episodes were like longer across the board, but I think that it worked. And then season five, like, I enjoyed it. I don't like how they split things up, but there's a break between the last two episodes of season four and the rest of the season. Um, but for season five, it was like there was three, sorry, four, like sorry, on the 26th of November, and then there were three on Christmas, and then one on the 31st. So yeah, you had 8 episodes. It was just split up into three parts. But overall, I enjoyed the season. Again, like I wish they hadn't done that way because I just wanted to binge the crap out of everything. But I enjoyed season five. I think they had to do some like different setup. Sorry, they had to do a lot of like setup to kind of recap like what happened between four and five, because the way four ends, this guy opens up and you're like, well, what are they gonna do? Are they gonna actually do the time skip, or are they gonna pick up exactly where they left? Like, what's the deal? And they did the time skip, and so you get into like how that goes and how this new world is like functioning, and it kind of gets really, it kicks into gear. And as that progresses, you find out more about the upside down and about the abyss and all that. And so I think that that was interesting, and like to find out the upside down is really, it's been like a wormhole this entire time. And I think like for that last episode, I was surprised about like the fight with Vecna and the Mind Flayer, and it's not that it was quick. It's just like I thought it was gonna last longer than it did. I'm not complaining about the fight though because I thought it was interesting. It's just that like they did their whole thing and then they had a longer epilogue than I thought. But like I didn't hate that. I enjoyed these episodes overall. I felt like they worked pretty well, and I think the series had a solid ending. And I'm curious about that though because it's just like we still have another series coming, like an anthology series, like for about the year like 1985, right? And it's like, so if you finished off the series, how do you feel about that, right? Like, if you're going to go watch that, is it going to be like, well, I mean, they ended really well, so I don't know about the series, or is it just like, hey, I could put this in this box and then go back and watch that series, see how I feel about the new series, and see how it connects to the original? It's like it'll depend, and some people just won't watch it at all, right? Um, and I'm undecided on what I'll do with that. But I'm probably gonna watch it at some point or another. But I won't be in a rush if I do decide to like watch it. Right. That being said, to close out everything, I enjoyed Stranger Things. It's an awesome series with awesome music and awesome characters, and they did Eddie wrong. I'm just saying. But as the series like winded down, I think like most people got a happy ending. Not everyone. I enjoyed that like Lucas and Mac got their happy ending, and I enjoyed Dustin's speech at the end. Uh, Mike seems like he's probably going to be traumatized for life, but he seemed to have a better way of dealing with that after talking to Hop. And so Will, Jonathan, Nancy, and Steve, they're all doing their own things by the end of that too. They seem like they're just going to be out there. You don't really get to see much of Erica in the end, but while we are talking about this, we're talking about Stranger Things, we're talking about math. Erica is a character that enjoys math, and like, that comes in handy. like in the missions more than once, and I like that. I appreciate that. But yeah, so like I enjoyed most of the characters. Some annoyed me, and some had annoying moments, but I think most were good. And I did want to talk about Levin before like closing. Oh, because like I did enjoy her character overall, and I enjoyed her powers and how they were depicted. Because like I said in like the earlier portion of this, right? Like she defeated a Demogorgon back when that was a bigger deal. Like they're still tough, but it's just like they figured out better ways to handle them as they progress. But she took one out early on. She also opened a gate in that led to the wormhole that is the upside down in the first place, right? She was able to also close a gate in season two, like I mentioned, there's a point where she gets an upgrade in her powers and she's able to lift like a 10,000 ton tank. And that's bonkers. And in season five, she's able to like use her psychic powers to propel herself in the air and effectively fly for a little bit. And I dig that. Now with her ending, it's like it's actually like open ended, right? There's a part where it seemed like she might have died, but there's some evidence that would suggest that maybe that's not the case. At the end of the day, Mike is telling well, they have a final D&D game at the end, and I mean if you saw it, you know, and I just spoiled it if you didn't, but they had that final D&D game, and Mike proposes a theory on what might have happened. And there's like sufficient evidence that it's like, well, maybe she's not dead after all. I would like to think that she isn't. That being said, I enjoyed Stranger Things overall. Most of the characters I enjoyed. Um, and I am sad to see it end, but I am glad that it got a decent ending and that they were able to do it on their terms. And hopefully, I'll be back in a dimension that's more familiar than this one because I don't think I'm home right now. I'll see you all in the next one. Professor Prime out.